Shawn Windsor.
You have been condemned to die in the electric chair by a jury of your peers, sentence imposed by a judge in good standing in this state. Questions?
I'm gonna hit you in the head there in room 7609.
You asked interrogative question around my tooth. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric, and I will pardon you if you didn't recognize our intro, once again expertly edited by Mark Fellhauer. That's The Green Mile. And we picked that because we're talking about people who have been let out. Some of us think they shouldn't have been. We're going to dive into that a little deeper with our special guest, Marc Chutkow, a former federal prosecutor, the lead prosecutor, get the bell ready, on the Kwame Kilpatrick public corruption trial. Mark Fellhauer is here, of course, and Shawn Windsor just joined us. And Shawn has a lot in common with the guy in The Green Mile. First of all, his touch can heal people. And second of all...
No, it's my voice.
Second of all, he is one of Omarosa's many exes. He just survived, unlike Michael Clark Duncan. I thought we had a laugh track on there. Is the drum roll thing broken too? Okay, well, very disappointing.
I love that Shawn just left you out there to hang.
Yeah, so much for the healing touch.
Good to see you, Shawn. How are you? Where's that
bad.
energy?
I was listening to the Human League in honor of our host on the way in.
Wow. So you don't want me, baby?
Love Action.
Yeah, you were working as a short order chef in Angelo's when I found you.
Not really a chef.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
More of a short order.
Don't encourage him.
Speaking of parsing, we are brought to you this week and every week by Luke Nowacki and Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. If you are looking to get some good advice and to make a plan for your future, do what I did. Go see Luke and Zach, and they will help chart a better financial future for you. And also the Caju Cafe, the pride of the East Side, where there's good food, good music, and good times every damn night. And we'll tell you what's going on there this week a little later on in the show. And of course, our most important sponsor, that's you, the members of the Soulmates. For as little as $5 a month, you can support this show. You can bring us back every week. You can watch the show. You can listen to the show before anybody else. You get to avoid all those annoying insertion ads. And once a month, you will get our bonus episode, which is exclusive to our Patreon supporters. You can find a link on our website to become a Soulmate. And now you can use Patreon to purchase individual episodes. If we have a guest you'd like to see the show, you give us a few bucks and you get to watch that individual one. Or you can purchase an individual bonus episode if you don't want to be a monthly subscriber. But we really appreciate it if you come back every month so that we can come back every week. But we have a special guest, as I said, Marc Chutkow, an outstanding federal prosecutor now in private practice. I don't know, Mark, are you in that part of private practice where now you say, the feds are overcharging everybody. The damn government has gone too far. We've got to take back our government. No more lawfare.
Maybe in the midst of trial, but not when you're trying to work out a plea.
Okay, yeah. When that's the kind of lawyer you want. When it's time to throw a haymaker, he'll throw a haymaker. When it's time to throw rose petals, he'll throw rose petals. But today he's just going to throw us some expertise on the pardons because it's been big news over the last week. Donald Trump is president, so the first week is always big news. Again, we talked last week about some of the hypocrisy we see in Washington. Every president comes in and says, I'm not going to be a king and rule with executive orders. And then they do, whether it's Obama or Trump 1 or Biden or Trump 2.
Are you saying don't hate the player, hate the game?
No, I'm saying hate the player that's created the game because you don't have to do this if you don't.
That's the Constitution.
I think it's debatable how many of these executive orders are going to pass constitutional muster. In fact, the whole issue of birthright citizenship is going to be decided by some judges. Now, here's what I'm kind of curious about that. And maybe Mark, I know we're already off topic already. Thanks, other Mark. But if the judges say, hey, birthright citizen is the law of the land, you have to allow that. And Trump says, well, I'm not gonna, or the Congress says, well, we're not going to do anything. who can enforce the judge's orders? They don't have police who answer to them. What happens?
Yeah, that does become a problem. And that's something I think of concern to the judiciary is that they want to have people have respect for the law and respect for their decisions because ultimately they don't have a police force. And if the executive branch is not going to enforce the law according to the Constitution, they really don't have much they can do about it.
Yeah, so we're going to see all kinds of things play out. I mean, now we're told these inspector generals who were fired that Trump was within his right to do that, but he needed to give them 30 days, and he needed to give rationale to Congress. Senator Lindsey Graham was on the news talk shows this weekend saying, yeah, he kind of violated the law, but, whatever. He can kind of fire him, so who cares? So I am very interested to see how the judiciary is going to feel because even the Trump-dominated Supreme Court has gone against the boss a few times. And, the Pope has the Swiss Guard, but the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't have anybody to enforce their laws. But again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. That'll be our future conundrum. What I wanted to talk about is the pardons, because we saw, Bill Clinton made some terrible pardons, some really scroungy people. I'm sure Obama had some people where folks are like, oh, come on, what are you doing there? And Biden, we saw, first of all, his screwhead kid, come on. But then these preemptive pardons, boy, oh boy, that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
but
are preemptive pardons, is that a common thing, Mark? Do you know?
It's unusual, but it has happened before. The most controversial example of it was back in the 1970s when President Ford, upon taking office, pardoned President Nixon for the Watergate-related crime. You look at that pardon, it's pretty broad in the same way that some of the pardons by Biden were very broad over a large period of time, so basically preventing another administration or anybody else from prosecuting him.
What part of the law allows, because I hate pardons. I don't care who the president is. I think it's ridiculous that just because one person decides, yeah, everything he did, that was a bad sentence, or I don't agree with that. Why are pardons even allowed?
Well, it's part of the Constitution. Article 2, which is the part of the Constitution governing the powers and responsibilities of the president, says that the president shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. And so the president, he or she, can pardon any federal crime, but they cannot pardon any state crime. That would have to go to either a state governor or a pardon board of some sort in the state sector. But yeah, it ultimately comes, you guys were playing some British music at the beginning and we're talking about kings. It really does come from the divine right of kings. Our Constitution, a lot of it came from the English common law. And the pardon power comes from the king's right as the sovereign. The offenses were considered to be offenses against him, so he could grant mercy or forgiveness for people that had committed a crime against him.
I've always kind of been suspicious of that whole Magna Carta. I don't know. It's 800 years old, but maybe it's time to
That's ridiculous.
Take a closer look at that. But what Biden did was release thousands of people with pardons. I mean, in the stroke of a pen, they were out.
You mean Trump?
No. I mean Biden.
Too? Okay.
I mean Biden. I think there was maybe 1,500, 2,500 people who had drug offenses that he said, you know what? If the law was what the law is now, back then, you'd be free anyways, or maybe you wouldn't be in jail. So I release thee. And then Trump comes in and he has the January 6 people. And folks, if you look at our back catalog, we had a reporter on who was in the Capitol during the insurrection. And if you heard what she went through, you know that this wasn't just a people who kind of lost their way on the Capitol tour and bumped into a Capitol policeman with a taser or with a spear multiple times. This was some pretty horrific shit. But Trump pardoned a lot of those folks, some of whom may have genuinely gotten swept up in the moment and some of whom were pretty bad actors. The reason I bring this up is not to pit Biden supporters against Trump supporters or say one pardon's better than the other pardon. but because there's a process, and there's a reason we have a process. And Kwame Kilpatrick, as Shawn often likes to talk about, with his commutation, there was a process when there was talk of pardoning him that actually got followed. And so we brought Marc on to talk a little bit about the process in general so that we can have a better understanding of what the process is. And I think as we understand what the process is, we'll understand why we have it. So Marc, take it away. President says, I want to pardon somebody. What is supposed to happen?
Well, for the last 130 years, the president would ordinarily go for the advice and counsel of the U.S. pardon attorney, who is a specialized attorney within the, reports directly to the deputy attorney general, so fairly high up in the Department of Justice, somebody who can basically look at a number of different factors that are mostly mercy-based factors to determine whether this person really qualifies to be pardoned and whether it makes sense. And so I should say that this person serves in an advisory capacity, so the president does not ultimately have to use their advice, but by the same token, most presidents have, and that provides some regularity and consistency in the decisions, making sure that there's no favoritism or partisanship in how the pardons are granted. And so some of the things that they look at are whether the person accepted responsibility, because one of the major themes for pardons is it's forgiveness, and to give forgiveness, you would think that the person has to accept responsibility and atone for their sins and show some sort of remorse. They look at the seriousness of the crime, obviously. That's one thing I think at issue in the January 6th pardons is there were people at different levels from nonviolent to violent crimes. You look at rehabilitation, whether they engaged in good conduct either in prison or after their sentence. And you look at ordinarily the way the guidance works in the Department of Justice is that you don't even consider somebody for a pardon until 5 years after they've served their sentence. And so those are the factors that are in play. The pardon attorney is supposed to reach out to the various field offices, the U.S. attorneys that actually prosecute cases around the country, to get their input so that they can get more details about exactly what transpired. They usually ask the U.S. attorney to confer with the sentencing judge so that you can get more details as to even beyond what was in the four corners of the plea agreement, let's say, or the indictment itself, because oftentimes that is only just a subset of the alleged misconduct that the person engaged in. And then from that, you kind of have a holistic sense of what this person has done. You compare them to all the other people that are seeking pardons, and to make sure that there's some regularity in the process.
So Marc, are commutations treated the same way as pardons? Because just so we're clear on this, Kwame Kilpatrick was not pardoned. His sentence was commuted, and not everybody who was, I'm going to say, blessed by Biden or Trump were pardoned. Some of them got commutations, which means they're still guilty. If they owe money, they still owe money. They just get set free or somehow are relieved of. Is it just being set free, or is there some other sanction that they can be relieved of with a commutation?
Yeah, you could reduce any sort of financial penalty. You could reduce the amount of supervised release that they would have after leaving prison, those kind of things. So someone could get a commutation who is not currently in prison if they have other sorts of penalties that they need to deal with. But that is a good point. Some of those factors are slightly different when you're looking at a commutation because in this case, the conviction stands, then they will look at, let's say, the severity of the sentence, how that compares to other people who are similarly situated and who are also sentenced to that. But still, you have the process in place where you're conferring with the U.S. attorney, with the sentencing judge, and trying to get all these factors so you don't make a mistake.
So,
go ahead, Shawn.
I was just going to say, to me, the big part of the Biden commutations were the folks that he took off death row but left in prison. And that was spun as Biden freed, murderers when he did not. A lot of those folks were on death row. He just took them off death row and said, you still are going to serve life in prison because they don't believe in the death penalty. So that's another, to me, interesting part of this.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're reducing somebody's sentence in any capacity, that would be considered to be a commutation. Something where the president is overriding the sentencing judge and their decision.
So technically, they're correct. He let murderers get off death row, but didn't let them out.
Yeah, but they're not running out free in society, and it was spun that way. A couple
Things
of
are
weeks
always
ago,
spun every
which was sort of to me. I mean, and I know it's in the Constitution, so you can't change it. But to me, that's all they should have the power to do is take somebody off death row because sometimes there are mistakes made.
I wanted to ask Mark this. So you went through how it's supposed to work in the procedure and making sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted, especially with the victim's family. But in the end, do they have to do that? Or can they just say, nope, let all these people go?
No, they could disregard what the pardon attorney has to say. And actually, in the Kilpatrick case, we had reached out to the pardon attorney, and I got the sense that person was fairly sidelined. I don't know what exactly they were doing, but it didn't seem like a rigorous investigation. So, yeah, a lot of these pardons, especially the controversial ones, oftentimes are done by the president, sometimes at the in opposition to what the pardon attorney would have otherwise recommended.
Now, Mark, you said that they asked the prosecutor to confer with the judge, and before we came on the air, we were talking about the difference between what someone is convicted of or pleads guilty to and what the authorities believe they did, and how a sentencing memorandum often goes way beyond what someone says, yeah, I'm going to cop to this. Why is that important to take a look at that document that you wouldn't know about if you just looked at their rap sheet and said, oh, he pleaded guilty to money laundering. Okay, I guess, who doesn't like to avoid paying taxes?
Right. Yeah, there's a bunch of different documents that the judge has access to that in some cases even the public may not have access to, that gives a kind of a larger picture of what this person has done. Because as you know, at a trial, it's very limited as to what you can actually put forward. You're not supposed to put in propensity evidence. Hey, that person did this same crime before, so they must have done it this time. So we're trying to protect that person's due process rights by being very limited in what is being presented to the jury, and then what ultimately may be the basis for their conviction. But there is oftentimes, this is not the first time they've gone through this rodeo. So the sentencing memoranda is one thing to look at that has a larger picture of what this person's criminal record might look like. There's something that is not available to the public, but the judge has, which is called the pre-sentence report. And the prosecutor and the defense lawyer have it as well. And that has even a broader picture of some of the encounters that this person has had with law, other sorts of alleged misconduct, things that they've done that is similar. And that's not going to be necessarily available to the public. And if you're doing a very quick pardon that is based on maybe political considerations or a superficial review of what this person has done, you may not catch the fact that, in fact, they had committed violence in connection with, let's say, a drug crime. Even though the drug crime only shows that the conviction was for the drugs, there may have been guns and other extortion and threats and things like that underlying how they operated that drug operation. I know that when I was the chief of the criminal division, one of my roles was to review pardon applications. So the pardon attorney would send out the pardon applications to each district and ask them to do an investigation for the pardon attorney. And so I would do that, and then they would ask for our recommendations as to what to do. And I spent a ton of time on it. I would really dig through the files. I would look back and see what had transpired. And in a lot of cases, the pardons made sense. A lot of what we were doing was looking back at the drug wars from the 1980s, late 1980s, early 1990s, where people were sometimes caught up in, let's say, just small amounts of crack delivery and were getting hammered for 30, 40 years in prison. So it made sense to do a commutation there. But I still felt it was important to look beyond just the conviction, because sometimes it would be easy if you have a small amount of crack back in the 1980s, that if that results in 15, 20 years in prison, maybe you don't try to allege all the other things that the person had done, including frauds and scams against people and maybe violence and whatnot, that doesn't really add to the sentence. And so By looking at all of that material and then presenting that to the pardon attorney really has a kind of a fuller picture as to whether this person truly has rehabilitated themselves and whether they're going to be a danger to the community when they're released.
Mark, did you see the case, I don't know if you did, about a fellow named Anthony Peeler that Biden pardoned? He had done time, I think 25 years he served time for conspiracy to commit murder. He killed an 8-year-old boy and his mother who had witnessed another murder for somebody else. And that sentence ran out a couple of years ago. Meanwhile, he was in federal prison for cocaine charges, and he was supposed to be in until 2033. And Biden pardoned him. And both sides of the political aisle in that state and just in general were worried that the homework wasn't done. In other words, you can say what you want about it should have been a life sentence originally. It wasn't. He served that time, but he was still going to be in prison for another 8 years. And just the look of that, do you worry sometimes that the homework isn't done? Because clearly this pardon, they weren't looking at the state level case.
Right. Yeah, I do think that is a risk, especially in the more recent pardons for the last, say, 20, 30 years. There's been a tendency for the presidents to issue the pardons at the very last day of office or maybe the last week of office. And sometimes they're in a rush because they got to get everything else taken care of and, packed up and move on. And so mistakes can be made. And so pushing that through on a kind of a larger level like that, if you haven't done your homework, if you haven't worked with the pardon attorney to make sure that you truly understand what is happening and have conferred with law enforcement, the community where the crimes had occurred, you're inevitably going to make some mistakes.
Can a president pardon himself? And one of the reasons I bring this up is because Jake Tapper was talking about he thinks that Biden might have pardoned himself but not said anything. Is that even possible? I think you would have to file something somewhere. So can a president pardon himself, and can you pardon somebody and not have it be public?
Yeah, that's an open question as to whether a president can pardon themselves from a constitutional perspective. Nobody's tried it yet, and so the courts have not had to rule upon that. But I don't think you could just pardon yourself in your mind and use that as a defense. There has to be at least some sort of written document that is published and out there before you leave office.
Where does it get published or posted? I mean, it's got to reside somewhere. Who's in charge of all that? It's like a document or a certificate, and I believe they not only issue it publicly, but then they send it to the court where the sentence was imposed, so that is part of the record. What if it's I'm just kind of spitballing here. What if it is preemptive, no crime is committed? Say Biden did pardon himself against any future crimes. Could that possibly exist somewhere and we just don't know about it? I would say no, because somebody would leak it, because everybody leaks everything. But could that be a possibility?
A preemptive pardon obviously wouldn't be posted in a court because you don't know what court to go to because the person hasn't been prosecuted yet. So that it would just be the certificate that that is kind of issued as part of the pardon itself. And I don't know the specifics is exactly how they do these filings, but there is always a public announcement as to the pardons, and it has a kind of a certificate with the president's signature on it and a seal. So I'm assuming that all presidents use that same sort of form. I know that there were, I think all pardons were written before typewriters, and so I think it's always been written in some form, but as to exactly where it gets posted or filed, I would assume it's probably with the presidential archives or somewhere in the federal archives.
So Biden could have this folded up in his wallet next to an old rubber in case he gets pulled over by the marshals?
Well, I suppose he could keep a copy of it. I think that the federal archives is probably going to have the official record.
Okay. So the thing about presidential pardons is it's kind of a moot point, since the Supreme Court had its ruling in one of the Trump cases that said there's broad immunity for a president. But there was a question as to whether Trump was going to pardon himself before he left in the first term, because as we saw, he did end up getting charged with some crimes. He chose not to preemptively pardon himself, which I thought was pretty interesting. Do you know whether the pardon power extends to, let's say, that Trump was impeached? I mean, he was impeached the first time. Could he pardon his own impeachment?
No, because the Article 2, where the pardon power is listed, I think it says something like the president shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. And then there's a further provision that talks about impeachments as separate. And so the courts have interpreted that to mean that the president cannot pardon himself from an impeachment, but just from other federal crimes.
Okay, well, that would seem to make sense with the checks and balances, although that system seems to be quaint these days. Mark, before we let you go, given that there is a process, given that there's a consultation, there's a pardon attorney who talks to the people who are on the case, there's an expectation that the prosecutors will speak to the judges, there'll be a review of the file, there'll be some placing things in historical context. Is it at all possible that these steps could be followed when 1,500 people are pardoned at once on the last day of a president's presidency or on the first week of a president's presidency?
I mean, it is possible if you've been going through the process during the course of the administration and then just decided to time it so that everything got released at the same time. I don't get the sense that that necessarily occurred in connection with the rash of pardons that occurred both at the end of the Biden administration and at the very beginning of the Trump administration. And that I do think is somewhat unusual in the respect that you almost have like dueling pardons. You've got the pardons coming out the door, some of which are preemptive, and then you've got pardons right at the beginning of an administration that are really directed towards a lot of the activity of the previous administration. So it almost seems like they're reacting to each other. And that seems to be unusual. Most of the pardons that occurred in the history of the United States have been more or less pardons that aren't connected to family members, aren't connected to people that are loyal to, let's say, the particular administration, but are truly acts of forgiveness or acts of amnesty. Like, for instance, at the end of the Civil War, Andrew Johnson, he gave pardons to many of the Confederate soldiers. George Washington gave pardons to members of the participants of the Whiskey Rebellion. So these were actual contestants or combatants that were opposing the president. So it may have still been controversial to people, but I don't think anyone thought it was self-dealing.
And of course, there were good people on both sides. This definitely seems to be more about legacy in the case of Biden, trying to somehow burnish his reputation with some mercy. And in the case of Trump, I kind of wonder if he's telling folks, if you do a job for the big guy, I'll get you out. But we will see where this goes. I think we're going to be talking about this more and more as some of these folks get back on the street and do whatever it is they do. Marc Chutkow, former U.S. attorney, headed the criminal division, was the lead prosecutor on the Kwame Kilpatrick public corruption trial. He's now in private practice. If you're looking for a good attorney, you know where to find him. But Marc, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Thanks, Mark.
So, this is, I mean, here's the bottom line.
Pardons are bullshit.
You can't really do your homework when you let thousands of people out at once. And one of the groups of people that Mark left out, and I think it's because he's a gentleman, but among people who deserve mercy, people who there may be a question about their guilt, there's big political donors. Does anybody remember Mark Rich?
Mark Rich, I was just going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, you know why they call him Mark Rich? Because he was rich.
Yeah.
And he was a big, generous donor to Bill Clinton.
Yep.
And Billy Boy let him out, even though he was a flaming turd. But so be it. So Marc Chutkow, great guy. Very, very interesting to look at these pardons, because I think I've heard a lot of people who supported Biden, and I've heard a lot of people who support Trump. This is one of those points where they say, this is one of the exceptions where I think my guy went too far. And it is pretty interesting. And I do think with Trump, some of it may have been demonstrative that, if you are with me, I will look after you. And I think that's one of the reasons why people like him. I think they see that as loyalty, and I think they see that as he will right wrongs.
I go back to this whole thing about, how the pardons are supposed to work, and then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter going to anybody. He can just, any president can just go, no, this person's pardoned. It's the same thing like you were talking about firing the inspector generals. Yeah, he's supposed to give 30 days notice and all this, and everyone's up in arms about it. But in the end, he can still fire him. So 30 days from now or now, isn't this just kind of the problem or perceived problem with Trump is that he doesn't follow any of the decorum or rules that we've had. It's like, yeah, but legally he's still kind of right in doing what he wants because the president has a lot of fucking power and he's using it.
Well, and how do the courts enforce their orders? They really have no way to do that. And Trump, one of the reasons why people like him is because, like the tech bros used to say, he moves fast and breaks things.
Mm-hmm.
He's a disruptor.
Yep.
Exactly. He's been sent to Washington to turn things upside down. And one way he's doing that is by yanking the tablecloth. And we're seeing a lot of stuff flying around. That's what people said they wanted. We're going to see if they like it once they get it. But it's really interesting. And the pardons are just, look, they're grotesque. You can't possibly know what thousands of people did and whether they deserve mercy or not. And one of the things that I always see with the federal cases, you'll see somebody convicted of something like mail fraud or wire fraud. You're like, what's that? They reused a forever stamp? Well, people get charged with those because those are 20-year felonies. And the wire fraud, which sounds pretty benign, may be because they were laundering money for a killer drug gang, and it's a lot harder to get them on the murder, but we got them on the dirty money. So you really do have to look at these cases to know what's going on. And our last couple presidents just haven't. So anyways, we appreciate Mark coming on and sharing those insights. And I will tell you that when the first talk came about Kilpatrick getting released back in the first Trump term, the process was followed. And you may remember the U.S. attorney at the time, which is the top federal prosecutor, Matthew Schneider, told Washington, we don't want this guy getting out. We object to this. We think this is terrible. Justice was served. And in the end, they ignored him. So even when the process is followed, it all comes down to what the president wants to do. And as Mark with a K said, it's because it comes back to the divine right of kings. I thought we got rid of these damn kings. Well, some podcast producers might think that planning for retirement can be a pain in the butt. It doesn't have to be that way. If your preparations A through G are a resounding failure, maybe you let Luke Nowacki help you out with your preparation H. Hopefully he can provide some relief in your time of pain and confusion and help you come up with a plan for a better future, which will let you sit comfortably no matter what kind of hemorrhoids you have. Should we do our favorite George Brett stories here? No, probably not. This family show, double taper. Call or text Luke at 248-663-4748 because when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Mosaic Wealth. Inc. member FINRA SIPC. Mosaic Wealth. Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent. Mosaic Wealth. Inc.
Sean's on his phone again.
Breaking news, sorry.
Yeah, what is
Go on without me.
He's
you have to recuse yourself from the show?
He's relieved that TikTok is back.
The Lions just hired a new offensive coordinator.
And we knew that yesterday.
Well, it was official today, so now we can write.
Was it Sylvester Kroom?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Sylvester Kroom.
Okay, good.
I haven't heard in ages.
That's right. Kroom 7609 coming up later on in the show.
You seem bummed about that, Sean. I don't know why.
Yeah. Mrs. Ben Johnson. Oh, Benny.
All right.
Oh, Benny. Benzo gone to the shores of Lake Michigan. What did you guys think about Matt Johnson? Or Matt Johnson? Ben Johnson. Sorry, Ben Johnson.
Benedict Johnson.
I was thinking of the Matt Johnson. Anyway, what did you think about Ben Johnson taking the job and saying, I want to stay in the division because I like beating Matt LaFleur?
Good for him.
Was he being a smart ass or is he setting himself up for a real chin shot when they go to Green Bay?
Well, what do you mean? I mean, he's talking about Chicago's rival. I'm just blown away how people are mad about somebody taking another job like this.
Oh, I think it's funny, but it felt very Ryan Day-esque to me, and I think Ryan is still, if he's clear-eyed, regretting those words because he's gotten thumped 4 times in a row, and it could be 5 as a defending national champ. Sometimes when you're defending national champ, the next season isn't so good. Or so I've been told.
Yeah, I was going to say, how would you know? I mean, I had a great year. This year was great. As a Michigan fan, it's fine.
Okay, this week in Room 7609, we have Ace of Base with Saw the Sign. No, I want to tell you about our Geek of the Week, and I was worried.
In that case,
because when I tell you about Geek of the Week, Shawn will make it all about intros.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So I got Shawn a new hat, and if you're one of our soulmates and you're watching us, you may see him put it on. But he sucked all the air out of the room. It's just he's.
I know.
It's like a black hole, and we're all being pulled into the vortex.
No, you guys have good energy.
I'm worried about you.
You don't need me.
Shut up. We like it. We like having you.
Yeah.
I was told to come here to needle the host.
What? Who said that?
The producer?
I think what I said was I prefer to have you in studio because it's easier for you to needle the host.
That's true. That sounded like an edict, though, in a very Mark backhanded kind of way.
Passive aggressive?
Yeah, a wraparound kind of way.
More fake news. I was worried that
Instead
Shawn
of just yanking from the front, kind of come from behind.
Gross.
Right? No, I don't mean it that way.
What? To reach around? Is that what you're
Oh, I didn't.
What?
No, I just mean metaphorically, right?
A metaphoric reach around.
Nice guy. Hey, come in here and fuck with the host.
That's not what I said.
That's what you meant to say.
Mischaracterization.
if you are watching us, you are getting a full display of some of the fine Soul of Detroit gear. I'm wearing the hockey-style lace-up hoodie.
Odd segue.
Shawn has the heather blue classic hoodie, and Mark is wearing our zip-up hoodie with the logo on the breast. It's a very sharp-looking group.
As Isaiah Stewart said last week in New York when he grabbed his Pistons jersey, I'm a Soul of Detroiter, motherfucker.
You're a soulmate?
Wow, I didn't know he was a big fan. That's good to know.
He said I'm a Piston motherfucker, but I'm,
yeah.
You just like to use that bad word twice.
And my text, by the way, says, I always prefer you in as it's easier for you to contribute, is what I said first. And needle ML. So go ahead, needle away.
There's no read for that. I do want to ask Mike, do you prefer motherfucker with an ER or an A on the end?
That's a good question. You have to have a
Context.
U in mother for sure. But I think when you put the AH at the end of mother and effa, then it becomes more of a term of endearment.
It does.
Yeah.
It's like cultural appropriation.
Now, I will say that when Coleman Young called himself the MFIC, I think he used ERs because Coleman Young just didn't care.
No, he did. He wasn't trying to soften anything, was he?
When you are the MFIC, you don't even, you don't need to go.
The speed with which it comes out too, how close the words are. If there's no space at all, then that's a little bit more endearing too.
Well, do you remember in the Little Red Book of Coleman Young quotations where I think he goes to Japan or he's introduced to some Japan dignitary? And
He's in Japan.
Yeah, and they say, blah, 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 we have this, and he explains this whole thing, and Coleman Young says back to the guy, yeah, we have a word like that back home in Detroit. It's called motherfucker. It's like, thanks for all the flowery language. We come right to it.
Yeah, the Japanese attaché or whatever was using a word in Japanese that could mean 100 different things.
Right.
And that's when
Coleman,
right.
Yes.
So Coleman
had great utility.
Said, yes, we have a similar word in English, motherfucker.
Yeah.
So to that point, I want to ask you an expletive parenting question because I don't swear on my kids. I don't know. I prefer not to. I know some people do.
would, but Teresa does it so much. I'm trying to give them a little variety.
Well, at what age are they aware of expletives and that you're not supposed to say that around adults? And
Pretty young.
Pretty young, right?
The first minute you say something and don't realize they can hear you, that's when they'll learn their first expletive.
Well, for Charlotte, she's a little older, so she hears it in popular music. And I had explained, you're going to hear it in culture in general, and there's a lot of context that you need to understand.
Stop letting her listen to Ice Cube.
Well, it's Taylor Swift.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And Sabrina Carpenter and Olivia Rodrigo.
Ice Cube, he's dating himself over there again.
I know.
Sabrina, the skinny one?
Huh?
Sabrina Carpenter?
I don't think she's skinny.
Oh, sorry. Different Carpenter. I'm dating myself again.
That's Karen Carpenter.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I
Okay,
caught
thanks.
it now.
Thanks.
No relation. But then
You told me you love me, babe.
my wife and I were texting.
That is a great song, by the way. Can we play that?
Superstar?
Is
that
that
the
the name of
Carpenters?
it?
I think that's Superstar, right? Great cover by Sonic Youth. Bloop. Anyway.
We're way off base.
We
Look at what Sean's done. Go back to your phone.
We like Sonic
Why-
Youth.
why-
Youth. We like Sonic
You're
Youth.
so distracting. But I was going to say this is.
Why don't we ever play that?
I'm going to tell you an embarrassing. Do you want to hear an embarrassing?
Sean, I love it when you needle the producer. And I'm going to own that.
I'm not being needled.
I'm not
about it.
prevaricating, motherfucker.
I'm trying to offer something out that you can just hammer me on.
Why don't you abate your prevaricating?
Disingenuous Montebank.
What's
All
that,
right, what's
Mark?
next? No, I'm not.
Continue, sir. Sir, go ahead.
You had Samantha Carpenter.
I'm going to pout now.
Go ahead.
No.
So your daughter used the word twat, and you were
Oh
shocked.
God, Jesus, no. By the way, Jesus, my mom yelled at me during the Lions game, the playoff game we went to, because I just kept going, Jesus. She's very religious. and
So
I'm
you can say,
sorry, Mom. Anyway, you have gotten me so far off track. What I was going to say is I was texting with my wife. Something happened, and I wrote in the text, I wrote, fuck, as in like, no, like, it wasn't an angry one or yelling at somebody. Little did I know that my 6-year-old had it, had the phone.
Oh, yeah.
And was reading. She's like, oh, what did Dad say? And she's reading the text back, and she goes, and then he used the F word. I'm like, how does she know what that is in the written form?
well, how does she know to say the F word?
Oh, because she knows not to say that. to
Exactly.
adults.
So
Yeah.
that to your original point. One time I was at a DQ in Ann Arbor. My oldest son was in first grade, so it was still warm. So it was September, and my mother was sitting there with us, and everybody had their ice cream, and he said, "Hey, Papa, I learned a new word." No, actually, he said, "Hey, Grandma." I'm sorry. He said, "Hey, Grandma, I learned a new word in school today." And we're all like, "What?" And there are dozens and dozens of people standing all around us, and he yells out, "Cock."
Well, it's a word. I mean, it's,
And I just thought,
At least you could blame it on Belvin.
that was a great. My mother, of course, about spit her ice cream out. She had a worse mouth than either.
But did you ask?
either-
Did you ask? Well, what does that mean?
No,
You didn't have them define it.
No, but you know how innocent they are, right?
I know. So when you're hit with something like that, it's like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah, it's like God, he would kill me for telling this story. He was in a tub when he was 2 or 3 with a first cousin who's kind of like a sister.
Yeah.
And we were babysitting her, so we put them in the tub together. They're probably 2.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you put an age in there.
And you
spent some time down south. Yeah.
No, they were 15. We put them in the tub together. No,
my cousin Jerry Lee Lewis said it'd be okay.
they were probably 2.5 because they were just talking, right?
Yeah.
And he sees her. He's never seen a little girl before because he just got a brother. And he looks at her and he says, "Oh, hi. I have." I'm not gonna say her name, but he says, "Hi." Her name. I have one of those too. And he lifts up and reaches around and points to his butt.
Well, that's just as cute.
So he was. Yeah.
I thought he was going to say, "Where'd your penis go?"
No, I just.
And then Sean walks in. They fall off the dumb ones.
I have one of those. I have one of those too.
Stupid joke.
Or it could have been like Ace Ventura.
Are we? By the way, are we okay?
Remember,
are we okay that cunt is now a little bit more acceptable?
Is it? I don't think it is.
Thanks to the proliferation of the British television, twat and the C word are everywhere.
Well, that reminds me of my favorite.
Because they
joke.
love those words.
What's not acceptable is coming up with pretexts so you can drop the C-bomb. You don't even watch British television. You're like, Mr. Bean was a comedic genius. You haven't seen British television since Benny Hill went off the air.
I'm watching a really fun show called Rivals right now on Hulu. But I almost texted you the other night because the newest season of Shetland, which is is out, and I looked at it and I said, I still can't believe Mike went there a couple of years ago just because of this show. It was really impressive.
I saw them filming it there. That season 8.
Probably the season,
and then pluck you out of the audience to participate. Like, this guy looks like he should be on the show.
I think they were a little nervous about being upstaged. They had a new lead, and I think she didn't quite feel secure enough in her position.
You're a big Anglophile, though, and you don't really use the word twat. Why is that?
Well, because if
That's a terrible word.
if I
It's
use
just
it
gross.
to describe people who deserve to be described that way, it's the only word I'd use.
Look, Mike is so
Trying to be
nervous he won't even
judicious.
look over here. He's looking straight ahead.
I'm just getting a glare. That's all. I want to
just
see
looking-
that sweet toque on you.
He's looking straight ahead.
This whole conversation reminds me. So over Christmas, my brother was up from Virginia. We were watching football. You know, they have the ads for what's coming up on Peacock or whatever. And he goes, "Hey, do you know what the female version of a peacock is?" Do you know what the female version of a peacock is?
It's a hen.
It's a peahen, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I said. He goes, "Nope, it's peacunt." And he walked out of the room. I'm like, that is such a good joke. And I was mainly mad because there was a legitimate answer that I gave, not realizing that he set me up for a joke.
Do you ever have? Do you have any memories of things you tried to do when you were in high school to be sort of dirty, and they would just bombed, or they weren't funny, or they were?
No,
you just
everything I always do is hilarious.
You just yelled something out, trying to be part of the crowd, and you realized you were in over your head in some way.
No, but it sounds like you do.
No. How about you, Mike? Or are you always funny?
I feel I'm about to fall into a trap here.
Go ahead.
No, I based on as I reflect on high school, it seems the only thing people laughed at in high school was me, not anything I said. So that's a repressed memory. I'm just moving on.
All right, who's your geek of the week?
Oh,
since I played the intro 20 minutes ago.
Wow. Okay, so the reason why I want to talk about pardons is Biden pardoned a cop who was.
Oh, I thought we were done with that stuff.
Now we've gone through the entire
scatological.
That's on
I know you want to use
TV.
that word. I know you want to use that
on.
word.
I was thinking more genealogical, but
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Plow ahead.
He wants to say gyneological. Don't
yes,
say
that's it. That's it. So Biden pardoned a cop who was notorious because a citizen in New Orleans, back when New Orleans had one of the most corrupt police departments in the country, narked on him because she saw him beating somebody and she was going to be a witness against him. So this cop arranged to have her killed. He was convicted and sent to prison, and I believe was on death row. And he's one of the people that Biden pardoned, commuted their sentence. And this was something that the prosecutors weren't aware of until just before it happened. And the person who was the most surprised and shocked by it, who deserved only grace, was the dead woman's daughter. And that got me thinking about pardons and why there is a process and why the process should be followed. And part of the process is letting the victims of the criminal know that they may be getting out or may be getting a break. And so for those of you who think this show is all about going after Trump on his cockamamie pardons, which is a word that I think Sam said to your mother, or was it?
It was Jake.
It was Jake. Okay. Salty Jake. They call him the salty one. But that's why we're talking about pardons, because when these processes aren't followed, people who don't deserve a break get them. And people who do deserve a little break because they've lost something terrible are re-traumatized. So those of you who are just giving these pardons because you think it's somehow going to help you and you're not worried about who deserves to be helped, you are my Geek of the Week.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
We're just getting caught up on some of our suggestions for room 7609 because we love it when you send us something cool, and we really like it when you send us an interesting story. Steve, we got your suggestion back in November. Sorry it's taken us so long to get these guys on the show because it's the Easy Band. It should have been easy, right? But it took us a little more time. But here they are with the cover of a Smiths song that was actually written about Shawn Windsor. It's called This Charming Man.
saldré esta noche, pero no tengo ni que ponerme. Y dijo que horrible que alguien tan guapo le importé. I jumped up entry boy who never knew his place. He said, return the ring. He knows so much about these things. He knows so much about these things. Yo saldré esta noche, pero no tengo ni que ponerme. Y dijo que horrible que alguien tan guapo le importé. Na 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 na. It's charming man. Na 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 na. It's charming man. I jumped up pantry boy who never knew his place. He said, return the ring. He knows so much about these things. He knows so much about these things. He knows so much about these things. Oh.
Easy Band.
Fun.
Eddie Van Halen meets Johnny Marr at the end there. That's something else. Now, I don't know why Steve, how he found the Easy Band. I think he sent this to us right around the time that the Smiths United were getting ready to do their annual Thanksgiving is Murder show at the Magic Bag. And they'll be playing again out there, so look for them. In fact, I think they're going to be doing a gig at the Lansing Brewing Company in Lansing in March. So I'll be going. Hopefully we'll see you there. But I tried to look up the Easy Band. First thing I found was healthcare professional use only. It's apparently an Easy Band is some sort of medical device you can get. But then I did find their website, and it's in Spanish. And I should have of course handed this over to Mark.
I think that was better than the original version, personally.
You just like that hammer-on guitar solo at
That's pretty sweet, yeah. And it's longer than the original.
Yeah, that was fun. I like the original too, though.
Did you know Morrissey's got a huge Mexican following? Did you know that? You probably knew that because you know everything about Morrissey.
Yes, I think it's one of the reasons he moved to L.A. because for some reason
they love him.
Morrissey became very popular with Hispanic young males. Mm-hmm. And in true Morrissey fashion, he was asked about that one time. And he goes like, "Oh yes, they're so lovely, such beautiful hair and skin, and their teeth are." What? I'm like, yeah, Maz, I got it. But and I do not speak very much Spanish, but let me do my best here.
I remember reading an article about it though, and the young Mexicans were saying, "Well, we like him because he's Irish, right? Irish, but he's raised in England."
He's one of the million Irish who live in England. And his parents were Irish. They moved to Manchester. Yeah, he was raised.
But he always sang about being out of place, right? And so a lot of Mexican Americans, I guess, associate themselves with that, which I thought was kind of interesting.
And one of his songs, one of the best songs on his album, "You Are the Quarry," which also has one of the best album covers, I think. But it's called "First of the Gang to Die," which is kind of a rite of passage song for folks who are in a little rough and tumble situation. It was very much written, I think, to cater to his audience, and it's a great tune.
You like that album cover? It's not that great.
Where he's holding the Thompson submachine gun? Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Morrissey dressed up like Al Capone, holding a Tommy gun in front of a crushed velvet curtain. I don't know. That's pretty good. It's not as good looking as Shawn. Look at this. He's wearing.
I put it on just for my
our limited edition Soul of Detroit.
To get us away from the Smiths talk. Yeah.
But so back to Easy Band. As best I can tell in my very limited Spanish, they've been around for about 20 years. They are from the Houston area. It looks like They like to play a lot of festivals and stuff. Bodas, quinceañeras, bautizos, aniversarios. And they just love good music, and they're people who play from the heart. Anyway, great cover. I love the accordion, and then that ripping solo at the end. Very, very good stuff. So thanks, Steve. We would love to get your suggestions for Room 7609. Remember, all we're looking for is a cool tune with a good story or an okay tune with a great story. You can send those to mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. And we hope that you will let us know what you're thinking. Also want to thank our generous donors. That won't take long because there's really just one. And it's a guy who, how do I want to put this? Is this my nemesis? Is this
Shawn wrote it?
Is this a troll? Is this?
I'm his nemesis? I thought I was his pal.
Anthony.
I guess not.
Is the guy.
Thank you, Anthony.
Hey, ML, it's your favorite smartass from X. Been a minute since last donation, but since you were so incredulous at my suggestion you enjoyed the 88 MSU team, despite them literally cheating their nads off in a steroid scandal, their nads did not come off. They just kind of recessed back into the body. I thought I'd extend an olive branch. Also, disappointed none of you came up with Dick Duran, at least to this point in listening, who finished the Lions' 2005 season as interim head coach and was immediately hired as Bills head coach for 2006. So he kind of answers both trivia questions as last coordinator head coach of the Lions to go on as an NFL head coach later. TB.
Oh, that's a great one, yeah.
It is good. I do think that's kind of an asterisk one because he was just filling in. And what happened to Gary Moeller when he left the Lions? Didn't he go to the Bears as well?
I thought he went to Cincinnati and became like just the tight ends coach.
But yeah, he wasn't a head coach. But yeah, Dick Duran, great.
I wonder what kind of career he would have had if he
Moeller?
Yeah,
if he'd won that last game,
been able to stay at Michigan.
That's right.
Yeah. Because he had some success there.
Yeah.
Well, he was the heir apparent to. Well, no, he was the heir to Bo, right? He was. He succeeded Bo. Had kind of a bad night. Was it at Good Time Charlie's or someplace?
It was at the Golden Mushroom, I believe, in Farmington.
Is that a euphemism? Oh, okay. So
it's a real famous, fancy pants restaurant. Yeah.
So I thought he was out with somebody. He got a little out of hand. And at that time, they ran him out on a rail and ushered in the Lloyd Carr era. So it didn't end too badly for Michigan. But I met Moeller on the day that Bo died when I was working at Channel 4. He came in to participate in some of the remembrances. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a random encounter. It's limited access. But I really liked him. I thought
he
seemed like a really good dude.
Really, really good dude. And by the way, it was the Excalibur in Southfield was the restaurant. I just looked it up. Yeah. And he was the Cincinnati Bengals tight ends coach before the Lions left and became the defensive coordinator with the Jaguars.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, there's
just correcting ourselves.
There's Anthony giving cash and trivia answers. Well done, sir. And we invite you to support us any way you can. You can make a one-time donation by going to mlsoulofdetroit.com. Hit the donate button. You can give us a one-time donation via PayPal or Venmo. We appreciate it. Or you can go to our website, mlsoulofdetroit.com. Hit the Patreon link. Become a soulmate. $5 a month, you get all kinds of great benefits. For $15 a month, you get more benefits. For $25 a month, you get more benefits. It's all laid out right there. And I think, aren't we doing something like for $50 or $60 a month or $100 a month, you can come in and sit in on a show?
Yeah, there was something on there.
You can also name your price. I'll tell you what right now.
Yeah, let me know and I won't be here. And that way you can have the seat.
No, we're going to let them say something. We want them to contribute to the show. That'll be
why do you always seem like you're trying to get out of this show?
I'm not. I just, that'd be fun for somebody to come down and hang out with you too.
Yeah, and you. I think most people would want to meet you.
They're sitting right here in this seat.
They do, but then they regret
it. They regret it immediately. Is that what happens?
And if you get I'll make this offer right now. If you give us $50 a month, we'll let you come sit in on the show. If you give us $100 a month, you can take a bath with Shawn.
Oh, There you go.
Because he's got one of those too.
It would need a very large tub.
It's in the back. And if I recall correctly, there's a mole on it. With a hair growing out of it. Nasty.
Oh, my God.
Somebody tweeze that, would you?
He's taking it to a different level, isn't he?
Always.
Could use that thing to tow a boat. Anyway.
It's nice, though, that your eyes were open, I guess, when you're doing that.
Yeah, it was the toothpicks keeping him open. It's like that Michael Caine movie, The Island, where they brainwashed his kid by nobody else saw that?
No.
I think those were matchsticks anyways.
I thought that was a Scarlett Johansson movie.
The Island, filmed in Detroit at the train station.
You're right, yeah.
In fact, they turned the Free Press's most recent offices
Ewan McGregor, right?
into a subway station. The old Federal Reserve building was supposed to be one of the mass transit portals.
You know, I wonder
what
would the movie industry be like if it had stayed? How long ago did they pull out? 10 years when
Rick Snyder.
When he
Snyder
cut the
gang.
tax breaks, yeah. What was that? 10 years ago?
More than that.
10 or 12.
10 or 12. I wonder where we would be right now if TVs and movies were.
Some other state would have had bigger tax breaks.
Like Georgia, which is where it's all.
Or North Carolina, Georgia, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, to some extent.
They just go wherever it's cheapest. I totally get that.
Yeah, and to some extent it becomes an arms race. It's like, 30% off, we'll give you 50% off. We'll give you 60%. Now we'll give you a subsidy. We'll give you cash.
Yep.
But there were a lot of people, a lot of young people who were getting degrees and taking on jobs so that they could have a career in that business right here in Michigan who were just totally left high and dry.
I knew people that moved back here.
Yeah.
Because they thought the industry was going to flourish here.
And it would have. I bet it would have.
It was flourishing.
Michigan has the advantage, has a pretty good geographic advantage. There's a lot of things here. There's water, there's forests, there's a lot of different landscapes.
Yeah, urban, small town, yeah.
Exactly. Also, yeah. Or a lot of urban decay, too. That's pretty much, you took advantage of it. Transformers, the island,
Well, and I remember seeing Alicia Silverstone walking right through Times Square in Detroit, just because she had some downtime, I think, between scenes or whatever the Hollywood people call it. And I was
we also have a pretty good labor force.
And by the way, for all those people who made fun of Alicia Silverstone, calling her fat girl and all that other stuff when she put on a couple
for
pounds.
bathing with her 12-year-old. What?
Was that Shawn? Oh, no. This is, what?
Yeah, she bathed with her.
Oh, well, she looked pretty good to me.
Emily
and a fine actress.
Emily Blunt and Jason Segel and John Krasinski were hanging out at the Cavern Club and places in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Because they made a movie there. And what was her name? What was the roller skating movie?
Oh, Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
Was it or something? No, it wasn't.
That was filmed. Yeah, it's funny.
Was it Whip It or something?
Yeah, it was Whip It. Good memory. But yeah, no, it was just randomly they were. Oh, here's some actor hanging out in some part of Michigan. That was 3 or 4 years of that, maybe.
Yeah.
And
then
bye-bye. It was a very cool thing.
Well, they built that whole studio, right? In Pontiac.
Allen Park and in Pontiac. I think
Oz was filmed, yeah.
I think Allen Park almost went bankrupt because somehow there was some deal with that studio. And then the one that they built in Pontiac, I remember, it was Pontiac. I think there was some question about whether this was a supporter of Jennifer Granholm and somehow had gotten some sort of preferential treatment. There's some of these things bore closer scrutiny, but one of the reasons why Snyder yanked it is because we still had a bit of a financial crisis, but it was also, we don't subsidize industries. Well, of course we do. We do it all the time.
Every government subsidizes.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we didn't. I wish there was a level playing field everywhere, but the fact of the matter is government does pick winners and losers, and sometimes the winners and losers depend on who is in charge of the government. So,
yep.
Sorry, kids. That's the way it works. Sorry to shatter the myth.
Would it change things a little bit, though? The perception, maybe, even.
Of this state?
Yeah, of course.
And Detroit in particular.
Well, Detroit, yeah.
I mean, Detroit's already kind of started to get a certain kind of cachet the last decade, but I think that would have expedited it.
Oh, well, get the bell ready. When I was trying to pitch my Kwame Kilpatrick book, it's still available if anyone wants to make me an offer. I was quoting all these stars because it was around that time who were talking about Detroit. Miley Cyrus said she became a woman in Detroit. I don't know what that means. I'm afraid of what that means. But Ryan Gosling was always raving about Detroit. I mean, you had A-list stars talking about Detroit being a cool spot.
It's interesting. It's very interesting.
It was an interesting motherfucker. But how would you like to run into Matthew McConaughey on a regular basis, and with Woody Harrelson mocking him? Those commercials are really stupid, by the way. The AI commercials with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. I don't think
I've seen that.
So dumb because they didn't have AI.
We do have to say their collaboration on True Detective is still one of the better seasons.
Really it was outstanding.
I mean, yeah, that was a great series of television.
It makes me want to drink really cheap beer one after another.
I heard this conversation in my house recently, which is better of the cheap beers, Coors Light or Hamm's, and I was told that Coors Light has become kind of
I love Coors Light.
a weirdly hipster beer. How is that possible?
No way. A lot of people drink Coors Light.
You know, just like Pabst. Remember Pabst went through its hipster phase?
Yeah, all the skateboarders were doing it.
Yeah, when I was a kid, and friends of mine who were working class like we were, their dads, that's what they drank. And then it became a hipster beer in the 90s.
Well, weren't beers all regional before, and then they got
Coors Light was
by conglomerates?
Coors Light, you couldn't even get out. You couldn't get outside of Colorado or Texas.
And now Coors Molson's almost as big as InBev.
Yeah, yeah. What happened was...
Yeah, what happened to Molson?
A lot of these regional breweries were going out of business, and this eccentric millionaire in Houston, I think it was, bought all the formulas and all the brands, and then he would reintroduce them into the regions where they were popular, but he wouldn't brew them. He would contract brew them at like the big Anheuser-Busch plant there or wherever, the big Labatt plant, and it was kind of a genius move, and he brought back a lot of these beers, and then he died, and then it got sold to somebody, and they're
probably
still doing
InBev.
it. In fact, I think the guy who bought all that business from him or his estate also bought the Playboy Mansion. I remember reading a story about just kind of a weird guy a young guy who made a lot of money and was doing some crazy stuff. But yeah, I still like a cold Stroh's. So we don't have any feedback from people. I can't believe nobody has shared what's on their mind with us this week. You get us back on track by sending us an email at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. Maybe people are just calling us on the Butterfield 8 number. Is it 313-288 Butterfield? I don't remember. Butterfield 8 307.
I think it's defunct now.
Is it defunct? Yeah. Oh man. So you didn't bring the noise, so it got defunct. One of Sean's favorite musicals. Sean's back on his phone. It's probably time to go.
Sorry, just work.
What breaking news? What happened now?
Just figuring out scheduling of who's going to write when. Yeah.
Okay. So before we let you go, I'm going to shamelessly plug my most recent column about Mike Duggan running for governor as an independent, and a conversation he and I had several years ago where he laid out for me his political philosophy, which is 1/3 of the people are for you, 1/3 of the people are undecided, and 1/3 of the people will never be for you. And the more the 1/3 who are against you hammer you, the more the 1/3 who aren't decided will come to your side. And I kind of think Donald Trump may be proof of that, because there were a lot of independent voters and Donald Trump got hammered. And some would say he was criticized by the media. I would say the media reported factual things that were not positive and that he didn't like. And in the end, I think that made a difference for Donald Trump. But Duggan thinks that he can find this lane to get between the Republicans and the Democrats and become governor.
He might be right.
I kind of think that he also did some polling that said he couldn't win the Democratic nomination, and so he's going to go another way. But this is a dude who's done some unprecedented stuff. So if you want to know more about what he told me when we had our exclusive interview, or some thoughts I had on how likely it is that he can win, and some possible reasons why he's doing it this way, please go to the Free Press. We'll have a link to my column on our website. And Shawn, I want to link to your favorite column from the past week.
It's a fascinating experiment. Not experiment, but it's kind of a petri dish, right? And I would bet if he pulls this off, there are going to be folks around the country, at the state level anyway, looking to see, are there different lanes? Can we branch out? I think the country's probably ready for some of this as well. We'll see. I don't know if it can work here or not, but we'll see.
There's a massive infrastructure that makes it hard to compete on a large scale like that. But we'll see. Shawn, what's your favorite column from the past week?
Whatever you've written, I would say.
Oh, so you plagiarized?
No, I didn't. I just am admiring. Admiring what you write.
I meant your favorite column that you authored. This is the free plug part of the show.
Yeah,
this is where you sell yourself.
Nothing really.
Okay, great. Don't read anything as Shawn writes. Then.
No, I wrote about which hurt. I made the argument that last year's loss for the Lions, in the context of what we saw Sunday, Buffalo losing again to Kansas City, again at the end of the game, again in a heartbreak fashion, so close, right on the doorstep of the Super Bowl. Not to mention the history of that franchise in the 90s losing 4 straight Super Bowls, just never quite get there. Kind of comparing it to the being the catatonic state of being a Lions fan for the last 60 years. Anyway, I made the argument that after having watched all that, last year's loss was much more painful than this year's because they were
closer.
They were a play or two away from the Super Bowl, and they were nowhere near close. And the fact that Philadelphia Eagles did the Lions fan base a favor by reminding them you weren't getting to the Super Bowl anyway, even if you beat Washington. So just take your divisional loss and start thinking about next year.
I do seem to remember asking on this show a few weeks ago whether this could be the most disappointing 15-2 Lions team in history. Once again, they can't win a playoff game. I mean,
put the context around that, please, though.
Well, no other team has been 15-2, so there's that. But one of the things that I'm wondering, and I think football, because it is such a violent sport, is different than basketball. But I think a lot of people remember how hard it was for the Pistons to break through when they had to get through the Celtics. They couldn't get through the Celtics. They finally get through the Celtics. They can't get through the Lakers. They finally get through the Lakers, and then they make it to glory.
Well, that'd be like them
Can the Lions do that?
That'd be like them trying to get through the Lakers or the Celtics without Dennis Rodman, John Sally, and Bill Laimbeer. I mean, that's the kind of losses the Lions just had on the defensive side of the ball.
And I don't think the Pistons ever had any turnovers in coaching, right? Maybe Brendan Levy left at some point or something.
Brendan Malone.
Brendan Malone, yeah. Sorry.
Son's a pretty good coach.
Maybe it was Brendan who was Levy because he left. That's what I was thinking. But yeah, I mean, it was Chuck Daly.
The injuries made that not a real 15-2 team. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think that they could replicate the Pistons' path to coming close and then finally getting over the top?
We did talk about that. Yeah, the Wings. Did you mention the Wings too in the 90s? Kind of having to.
I don't think the Wings really had to break through like that.
Well, they got
95 in the.
They got swept.
Yeah.
They got swept, and then come back the next year and lose to Colorado, and then finally come back. Yeah, so they had a 2-year run of getting close and having some heartbreak, but that's okay. You've wiped that from your memory.
No, but I mean, it wasn't the same team in their way every year.
It is a big brain.
The
There's
Pistons,
a lot to get lost.
The Pistons, it was the Celtics. Every year it was the Celtics. Then it was the Lakers. Then it was the Lakers.
Remember they had to get by, Jordan had to get by the Pistons.
Jordan had to get by the Pistons, right?
Yeah, no, maybe there is something to that. They got to be healthy, though. That's the main thing.
Okay, so we're going to, Shawn said there's a chance I might be right. That's as good as it's going to get. So maybe it's
You're
time.
always right.
Just ask yourself.
Exactly. Pardon yourself, by the way.
Pardon me, sir.
Thank
Divine Right of Kings.
Thank you. Handsome.
Little Kings. Anybody ever drink Little Kings?
I did.
Ales? What?
I did.
Yeah. No? Good? Bad?
Oh, they were fine. Like little, I don't know, you get them in a little bucket, right, or something.
Yeah. There was a place in Chicago called Chili Max. They used to serve Skyline chili, Cincinnati-style chili, and Little Kings.
Yeah, I drank the Little Kings in Champaign, Illinois in the early 80s.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
While you were sticking your ass out of a bus on a stolen moped. All the stories are kind of... and Belvin was exposing himself to your 2-year-old son in a bath.
Oh, the Little Kings I remember, though. Yeah, that's different from the malt duck. Don't conflate them.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
All right.
I would never conflate.
All right, thank you.
Anyway, next week we look forward to seeing you again.
And having some fun?
We always have fun. It just doesn't seem like that, and it's not enjoyable for our audience.
Did I do my job?
Total jerk.
Did I do my job?
I don't know. Maybe you did too well.
Did I do my job? Did I come to life and needle our boy over here?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Shawn, when you love what you do, it's not work.
Okay, I guess that's true.
And if Cyrus were here, he would tell you that instead of just taking us.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Miracles are funny things. You never know when they're going to happen. And when they happen in
Drew's basement,
that's the most unbelievable miracle of all. This is the story of a miracle that happened here where I work.
The the soul of Detroit.